The year was 1987. Deep in the frostbitten territory of Ukraine, then still under Soviet control, an elite Soviet military unit was conducting routine field training exercises. The sky was grey, and the wind carried the distant hum of armored vehicles. These soldiers were hardened, disciplined, and focused on their maneuvers. But on this day, something else was watching them. Just before dusk, the radio operator at the mobile command post detected an unidentified object, moving low, erratic, fast. The other officers dismissed it at first, thinking it was just a glitch or a bird swarm. But then, the soldiers looked up, and they saw it with their own two eyes. A disc-shaped craft, metallic, pulsing with a faint glow, hovered silently over the treetops. No Soviet aircraft flew like this. It made no sound, but it moved like nothing any of them had ever seen before in their entire lives. The squad was ordered to lock on. One of the operators launched a portable, surface-to-air missile. The projectile streaked skyward, trailing white vapor, and connected. The object exploded in a controlled burst of light and energy and fell from the sky in a deliberate spiral. The wreckage came to rest in a clearing, smoking but intact. A 5-man recon team approached it first. Behind them, others followed cautiously, weapons raised, eyes scanning every corner of the smoldering craft. Then they stopped. From the side of the vessel, a panel opened, without noise, without mechanical movement. A light spilled out, and then they emerged. 5 figures, humanoid in shape, but clearly not human. They stood shorter than average men, with elongated skulls, black featureless eyes, grayish skin that glistened in the light. No weapons in hand, no suits, just the calm, silent presence of beings not of Earth. The soldiers shouted orders frantically. Some raised their rifles. A few hesitated. The air was suddenly dense with something unseen. The beings walked forward, then halted, as if silently communicating. And then, without warning, they moved toward one another and fused. It defied all understanding of physics. The 5 individual forms shimmered, blurred at the edges, then coalesced into a singular sphere of radiant white light. It hovered above the ground, humming at a frequency that vibrated deep in the chest. One of the soldiers screamed for orders, but before anything could be done, the light intensified. In an instant, the sphere discharged a blast of pure energy, blinding, focused, unrelenting. It struck the ground in a wide cone, engulfing the forward unit. A flash, and then silence. Where once stood 23 trained soldiers, only stone figures remained. Not statues crafted by hand, but petrified remains. Their faces were frozen in final expressions of confusion, fear, or awe. Their bodies were locked in place, mid-movement, mid-breath, turned to a chalky, limestone-like substance. Only 2 men survived, shielded behind a transport vehicle at the rear of the formation. They crawled out, gasping, clutching their rifles, and staring in horror at what lay before them. The light sphere slowly dimmed, and where it had been, nothing remained. The alarm was triggered. Within the hour, a KGB recovery team arrived. The site was cordoned off. All remaining personnel were detained and interrogated. The statues were carefully removed, crated, and flown to a secure research facility outside of Moscow. So was the wreckage, now cold, inert, and largely intact. What happened in the lab remains known only to a select few, but the CIA summary, later declassified and released online, refers to a 250-page KGB investigative dossier. In it, Soviet scientists are said to have examined the petrified remains and concluded that they were once living tissue, now transformed into a stone-like material at the molecular level. Instantaneous, irreversible, inexplicable. They concluded that the energy used could not be understood with current human science. One Soviet scientist, quoted in the file, remarked, "If this file reflects reality, this is an extremely menacing case." The CIA, which obtained the document through unknown means, produced a translation memo summarizing the report. It is only a single page, but it contains enough to chill the bones. It describes the entire incident in cold, intelligence language, noting the UFO, the hostile engagement, the transformation of the soldiers, and the subsequent cover-up. A CIA officer, name redacted, allegedly remarked that it was a horrific picture of revenge on the part of extraterrestrial creatures, a picture that makes one's blood freeze. This one-page memo is real. It sits in the CIA's online reading room, declassified in 2000, filed under the code document 00055517761. It cites its sources, including a Ukrainian newspaper and, controversially, Weekly World News, a tabloid often dismissed. But the document is not satire. It was officially translated, reviewed, and filed by US intelligence. It references real Soviet entities, real locations, real events. To this day, the 250-page KGB report has never surfaced. If it exists, it remains under lock and key. If it ever saw the light of day, it could confirm or debunk one of the most extraordinary military encounters ever claimed. No further documentation, no additional photographs, no witness testimony has been released. The two surviving soldiers disappeared from public record. No further information about them has surfaced in any official capacity. Were they silenced, relocated, or perhaps they never spoke again, too traumatized to recount what they saw? The petrified remains, allegedly transported to a secure underground lab, have never been displayed, never admitted to, never denied. The UFO wreckage, if recovered, has not been disclosed by any Russian or American authority. The blast of unknown energy, the seamless fusion of the beings, the instantaneous petrification, none of it has been explained. But the document remains, one page, real, sitting in the vaults of American intelligence. Not fiction, not a movie script, not a hoax. A genuine file processed by the Central Intelligence Agency with words that describe an event no science can currently explain. A UFO shot down, 5 beings confronted, 23 Soviet soldiers turned to stone. The question is no longer whether someone reported it. The question is, what exactly happened in that Ukrainian forest, and why is no one talking about it now? Hey, I hope you've enjoyed the story so far. If you do and you want to hear more, please leave a like and subscribe to my channel, and leave a comment down below, as it lets the algorithm know that you like my content and it promotes it to more people. My goal for the channel is to hit 50,000 subscribers, and we're closing in fast, so thank you, and back to the stories. Hey Anon, I want to share a story with you. Believe it or not, that is up to you, but I will ask just one thing. Don't try this for yourself, okay? In 2015, my friends and I went to the forest for a picnic. We planned to drink, walk around, the usual stuff. We picked a forest plantation not far from our city for the trip. There were 6 of us in total, 3 guys and 3 girls. You know, to keep things even. We found a nice clearing. The girls set up the tents, and the guys and I went to gather firewood. Anon, I did not like that forest from the start. Don't think I'm a coward, but sometimes you just have to trust your gut. The moment we entered the clearing, I could tell something was off. Even though it was a bright, sunny day, the place felt weird, quiet, heavy, almost sad. I did not say anything, but I noticed my friends gradually stopped talking too. We hurriedly collected enough firewood for the night and rushed back to the tents. By evening, we had completely forgotten about that uneasy feeling. We were having a great time, ate almost all of the food we brought, drank about a case of beer, and started telling scary stories, as you do. Wild ones, about ghosts, faceless people, old men with axes. We were drunk, did not care, but we did manage to spook the girls a bit. When it got late and we ran out of stories, we started settling in for the night. I crawled into my tent with my girlfriend, and I could hear some restlessness in the other tents. I smirked. Seemed like someone was not ready to call it a night yet. I tried making a move on my girlfriend too, but she turned me down, saying she was not feeling well. I thought about pushing a little, but I did not want to come off as some kind of creep, so I just lay down, a little annoyed, and tried to tune out the noises outside. Eventually, I fell asleep, and then I had the strangest dream. I was crawling through a maze underground. Not walking, crawling, because my body was not human. I had 4 white furred legs, a long tail with a blade-like tip, and somehow, none of this seemed strange to me. It felt natural, but I was terrified, overwhelmed by a crushing sense of sadness. I was running from something, even though I knew deep down there was no escaping it. I kept searching for a way out when I suddenly came across a figure. From my low vantage point, it loomed over me, but it looked human, only dead. It was covered in blood, its face a ruined mess, with only one eye and part of its jaw intact. That one eye stared right at me. Then the corpse reached out and mumbled something. I was frozen in terror, but it kept moving closer until it was right in front of me. Kneeling down, it grabbed my shoulders, and for some reason, I knew this person. I had no idea how, but I just knew. The corpse pulled me against its blood-soaked chest, not violently, but almost tenderly. That is when I screamed, but it was not my voice. It was an inhuman shriek. I woke up, bolting upright in the tent. My ears were still ringing with that terrible screech. My girlfriend was still asleep, but she was tossing and turning, clearly having a nightmare of her own. I needed a smoke. Climbing out of the tent, I sat on a log we had been using as a bench near the fire. The embers were still faintly glowing. I lit my cigarette off one, took a drag, and looked up. And then, I nearly shit myself. There were eyes in the darkness, staring at me from between the trees. I had never seen eyes like that before. They glowed, really glowed, not just reflected light like an animal's. I knew that normal animal eyes shine in the dark because of a layer behind the retina that reflects light back through the receptors. But there was no light source, no stars in the overcast sky. The fire barely gave off a glow, and yet these eyes shone blue, like 2 tiny flashlights. I froze. My drunkenness vanished instantly. What do? Grab a stick? But if I moved, would it attack? We were only 5 meters apart. While I was debating my options, the eyes started rising. The creature was standing up. At first, I didn't understand what was wrong, and then it hit me. It was standing on its hind legs. I frantically tried to remember what animals could do that. Bears? Ferrets? But it was much too small to be a bear, too big for anything else. It was about 1 meter tall now, still watching me, barely blinking. I was drowning in fear. I started backing away. It took a step forward. I began praying. I was certain now. This was not just some animal. No normal creature behaves like this. If it had been, I would have either attacked or fled when spotted. But this thing, it just watched. Then, out of nowhere, salvation came. Dan, my friend, crawled out of his tent to take a piss. He had a flashlight with him. I yelled at him to shine the light my way. He did. The beam landed on the creature for a split second, and in that moment, I nearly lost it. It looked like a small person. No, like an animal pretending to be a person. It stood on its hind legs, covered in white fur, with clawed feet and an elongated muzzle. Its glowing blue eyes locked onto me, and its ears, long, striped, bent back like a rabbit's. But the worst part, that tail, long, writhing, with a blade-like tip. The creature hissed at Dan, then dropped to all fours, and, with 2 powerful leaps, vanished into the darkness. Neither of us slept that night. We sat on the log, flashlights in hand, jumping at every rustle in the trees. In the morning, we did not tell the others. We just packed up and left as fast as we could. Later, I found out I was not the only one who had nightmares. Everyone in our group had one. My girlfriend though, she said the corpse in her dream hugged her too, but in hers, it was crying. What was that thing? Were the dreams a message? And if so, what did they mean? I don't know, and I never want to find out. This happened in the north of our country, in a military town, when my friends and I were about 11 years old. Our fathers were away at sea on nuclear-powered ships. Our mothers waited for them in the kitchens, and we kids were mostly left to our own devices. The town, an isolated military garrison in the Murmansk region, sat beyond the Arctic Circle. Summers brought the polar day, when the sun never set. Winters, on the other hand, were swallowed by the polar night, no sun at all. It would grow dim around noon, then, within minutes, plunge back into darkness, a magical place. We never struggled to find things to do. Sledding, building snow forts. There was no shortage of material. Exploring the hills, skiing, skating. But more than anything, we loved playing in the yard of House 48, an old, abandoned 5-story building. House 48 loomed over us with its boarded-up entrances and dark, empty windows. A haunting sight, and an irresistible lure. Adults pretended not to notice our fascination, knowing full well that forbidding us would only make the place more enticing. So we gathered on the steps, gazing up at its hollow windows, daring each other to go closer. For the longest time, there was no way inside. The military had sealed the doors tight, some even padlocked, but kids are resourceful, and eventually, we found the entryway. The one where time and Arctic storms had loosened the wood just enough for a child to squeeze through. I remember the day we finally got inside. Our little band of explorers met after school, at the peak of the afternoon darkness, around 2 o'clock. One by one, we slipped through the gap and entered the forbidden space that had taunted us for so long. At first, it was exhilarating, but as we ventured deeper into the building, the thrill slowly gave way to unease. Inside, it was bitterly cold. The darkness was thick, pressing. We kept our flashlights off. Light could give us away. The only sounds were the echoes of our own footsteps and the wind howling through broken windows. We climbed to the 3rd floor and wandered the corridors, peering into the abandoned apartments. The building's layout was simple. A central stairwell, and from it, 2 long hallways stretching left and right, lined with empty apartments. Most of the doors were gone, the rooms stripped bare, but traces of past lives lingered. Coat hangers, forgotten dishes, twisted metal rods, broken furniture, tattered rags. After a while, we decided to settle in one of the smaller rooms on the 3rd floor. The apartment door, barely hanging on to its last hinge, was shut behind us. The girls got to work clearing the space, while the boys took up position by the window, watching the yard for signs of trouble. Was anyone being called home? Had the adults noticed us? Natasha and I swept out the scattered debris while the boys dragged in a small table and a few empty crates from the kitchen. An old, moth-eaten blanket was hung over the window. Only then did we dare turn on our flashlights. We gathered around the table, laying out a thermos of tea and a few sandwiches. After a quick snack, we turned our attention to our new headquarters. The room was small, its blue cornflower wallpaper stained with rust and covered in frost. In the corner sat an old armchair with exposed springs, completely stripped of its cushions. On the windowsill rested a plush cheburashka, and beside it a dented bucket with frozen water inside, standing where a radiator had once been. That was all there was. Nothing but the echoes of someone else's life left behind. None of us dared to touch the toy. Maybe it was some unspoken rule among children, not to disturb forgotten toys that once belonged to others. We only cast sidelong glances at the abandoned cheburashka, sighing as if silently scolding its owner for forgetting it. The toy, in turn, gazed off to the side, not even out the windows, as if it already knew no one would return for it. We searched the chair carefully, but there was nothing behind or beneath it. In the sagging springs, we found an old photo album, but its pages were empty, so we quickly lost interest. For a while, we simply sat in the center of the room, speculating about who had lived here before, who had owned the toy, why had it been left behind, how long had this enormous, lifeless building been abandoned. Almost all of us had been born after the evacuation of 48. Time had moved on. New families had arrived, with fathers stationed at the base, replacing those who had once called this place home. Outside, the wind picked up, sending flurries of snow through the open window. The blanket we'd hung to cover it flapped uneasily, no longer able to hide our presence. It was getting late. We had seen enough for today. We could always return tomorrow to continue exploring. I slung my backpack over my shoulder and moved toward the window, but in the dim light, I tripped over something. The bucket. It clattered loudly across the frozen floor before coming to a stop at Natasha's feet. She called me over, pointing at something trapped in the ice at the bottom. We aimed a flashlight at it, and after a moment, we could make it out. A black and white photograph, frozen solid in the water. It showed a young woman holding a child in her arms, standing in front of 48. The room fell silent. We stared at the image, wondering how it had ended up there. Had it been forgotten during the move? The empty album suddenly made sense. Now we could see the owner of the plush toy with our own eyes. The mood had shifted. No one felt like talking anymore. Someone suggested breaking the ice to free the photo, but we quickly realized that would destroy it. There had to be another way. We were tired, frozen, and it was getting late. If we stayed much longer, someone would notice we were missing. Reluctantly, we left the bucket where it was, placing cheburashka inside, closer to its long-lost owner. We turned off the flashlight, pulled down the blanket from the window, and quietly made our way toward the exit. The journey back was even more unnerving. Every sound seemed amplified in the stillness, and the wind howled through the empty hallways like a distant voice. We walked carefully, as if afraid to wake something sleeping. As we reached the first floor, just steps from the front door, we froze. Above us, in the dead silence of the stairwell, something was moving. A metallic object rolled across the floor with a slow, deliberate scrape. A single image flashed in our minds. The bucket, tipping over on its own, its frozen photo spinning across the empty room upstairs. Panic gripped us. Without a word, we bolted for the entrance, but the doors were wedged shut with snow. We shoved against them, but they barely budged. And then, from the stairwell above, we heard it. A heavy, metallic sound. Something rolling down the steps, step by step. Faster, louder, coming straight toward us. Then everything became a blur, like a dream. I remember the boys throwing themselves against the door, Natasha and me screaming for help. The noise from the stairwell grew deafening. The sound of something heavy tumbling toward us. And then, suddenly, the door to the outside swung open with a crash. A figure appeared in the doorway, a man in a military uniform, his face twisted in surprise. It was the father of one of the boys. He had been returning from work, and when he pushed the door, it practically broke off its hinges. At home, we got the scolding of our lives. Our parents lectured us for sneaking into forbidden territory, for disappearing without telling anyone. But even after we calmed down, none of us spoke about what had really happened in that stairwell. We never told our parents or teachers about the metallic sound rolling toward us or how the bucket had seemed to move on its own. Later, we learned that the entrance to 48 had been tightly boarded up. From that day on, my father's unit assigned 1 or 2 soldiers to patrol the area around the clock. I remember my father sitting me down afterward. He sighed and said, "Imagine if you had not been found that day. You could have spent that whole night trapped in that frozen, dark building, and by morning, you might not have made it out at all." A couple of weeks later, we gathered again near 48, standing at a safe distance while the assigned guard made his rounds. The boy whose father had saved us told us something strange. His dad had heard the metallic clatter from inside the stairwell before he even saw us. He had been drawn to the sound, and only when he got closer did he hear our muffled voices calling out. None of us had much to say. We just stood there in silence, staring up at the lifeless windows. And then, Natasha gasped. We followed her gaze, and at that moment, our blood ran cold. On the 3rd floor windowsill sat a plush Chebarashka, the same one we had left in the bucket, nestled beside the frozen photograph of its long-forgotten owner. This is my only green text-worthy thing that's ever happened to me, but I swear it is real. Both me and my GF still remember and talk about it. Be me, maybe 26, live with GF in an apartment near a beach town. Technically, the beach is on an island, so you have to cross a bridge to get to it. The bridge goes kind of high up, so boats can cross under it. When you go over the bridge, you can see out pretty far. Also important for the story, across from our apartment is a small airfield/airport. Not a big international airport, but one of those smaller ones people use for private planes. I'm not a plane guy, so I don't know, but you get the idea. I drew this picture so you can see how it all fits together. Anyway, on weekends, me and my GF would drive over the bridge to go to our favorite bar or restaurant. One night, we are driving back. It's a little rainy. Me and GF not really talking, just waiting to get home. It's a relatively small town, so we are the only ones out on the road. As we come to the top of the bridge, I notice out in front of us, about where the airfield is, are lights. Not just any lights. I'm talking like a fully lit football stadium. It looked like the Patriot Stadium had been transported right across from our apartment. Never seen that in this area before. GF notices too. I can't remember who spoke first, but we were both like, "What the fuck is that?" and began to point. Suddenly, all the lights disappear at once. Like, immediately. No 30-second dimming or different parts turning off. Just all off at once. GF and me are bewildered. There is no way the lights were just helicopters or planes or whatever. They would not have been flying so close to one another, and there was no building that size in the area at that time. Whatever it was saw us coming and turned everything off. Okay, I live in a secluded town with a lot of out opportunities. I love abandoned places and learn how to adapt in a lot of unfriendly spots. I've had a few nasty encounters with homeless crackheads, traps set by mental landlords, wild animal encounters, but one encounter that takes the cake happened to me a few years back. Be me, 23 years old, a stupid, adrenaline-loving dude bro who now explores alone after trying one too many times to get his friends to tag along. I used old maps from my local library to scout out abandoned mines and mills on the outskirts of my town. At that time, I went cave diving almost every weekend. I had a few favorite spots, including a few swimming holes. Eventually, I started running out of fun spots and started going further and further out. Eventually, I found a surface mine that does not have any connecting trails via satellite on Google Maps and marked it on my GPS. Getting to it was one hell of a journey, as I needed to take multiple trips. Once I got to it, I noticed datura flowers absolutely everywhere, along with scraps of clothing. As gross as it sounds, some kids party a bit too hard and leave their dirty undergarments/clothing deep in the woods. After that mess, I attached a line and started climbing down the main shaft. That's when I hear a kid crying deep within the mine. I took some time to try and identify it, as shafts can easily throw back sound in odd ways. The same sound is repeated verbatim, like a recording. I instantly get bad vibes and start heading up. The sound gets higher and louder, like a train horn that is moving towards you. I kept trying to rationalize it while climbing up as fast as I could. At the mouth of the mine, I realized I might have left a lost child to die in there. So I did the obvious thing and called the cops once I got back into cell phone range. My face went. They kept every mine in a 20-mile radius with an explosion a few weeks after my exploration session, even the harmless ones.